The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, let's take a look at the weather as we come out of the weekend and work through the middle of July. Joining us for our weekly weather update, Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Eric, good to talk with you again. Hope you had a great weekend. Let's get caught up on what we've seen the last couple of days across parts of the country. I know more flash flooding, some areas that needed rainfall in the Midwest. Sounds like we got a good shot of precipitation, but some severe weather in there as well. Eric, what have we seen the last couple of days?
Well, I mean, just going back even before that, all the way back to June, we've seen just wide open access to moisture coming around the backside of the Bermuda High. The Bermuda High has been expansive. It's been powerful. It's just shoved moisture through the Caribbean Gulf straight into the Midwest. And that has to go through Texas first. And like we talked about last week, the severe weather in Texas, they had more flash flooding over the weekend there. Just to give you a stat to think about for Texas, there was a calculation done on just how much rainfall fell out of those flash floods on July the 4th. And it's approximately 3 trillion gallons of water. Now, we've seen that kind of moisture spread across bigger geographies as well. And over the weekend, we saw some pretty nasty weather that came into parts of Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. There was some very, very strong winds, almost over 100 miles an hour in places. So I'm sure there's some damaged corn kind of on the intersection between Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. But there was a lot of rain with it as well. And that was one of the holes we were trying to fill in. If you just have a look here at the recent precipitation, that's what open access to the Gulf looks like. Just a lot of storm activity. And some of these storms put down 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of rain over a short amount of time. Now, when the crop's as high as it is, and as big as it is, it can take that rain if you've got the right kind of soil. If you have that kind of pan-hard, dry soil, we've got an issue. So, Jesse, with the weekend rains, the recent rains, I do want to give you kind of a stat that was a little bit just kind of amazing to see this morning. I went back and I looked at the NDVI data that we've got through the first week of July. And if you look at Iowa and Nebraska, it's not just high, it's like the highest we've seen in 25 years. When you include the rest of the Corn Belt, which we know there are pockets of problems in the rest of the Corn Belt, but the NDVI values for the entirety of the Corn Belt are also highest they've been in since the year 2001, which is where that particular envelope of data comparison starts. So you look at all of that and just say, well, what kind of, if any, threats are there coming to the crop as we go forward? So this is what I want you to think about. Bermuda High's been in place. It's been powerful and expansive. The Pacific High has hugged the Northwest coast. So in the middle, we've just had flow coming around and just colliding, and that's why we had these storms. The Northwest has been very dry. I mean, like the Columbia Basin up in Washington, Oregon has been near record dry. We've seen wildfires in the West. We've seen huge Canadian wildfires as well. Yet outside of that, we've had just wide open access to moisture. Now, we had heat at the end of June, a little bit in the beginning of July. And I'm concerned that that whole pattern is going to try to come back. It's interesting. All the models have tried to bring heat from the West into the central U.S., and they've been all wrong. The heat's been coming every time the Bermuda High flexes in from the east and brings the heat from that direction. I think we might see that again at the end of this month. So, Jesse, here's what I'm watching. A couple of things of concern. The models over the weekend trended hotter as you get into next week and beyond. That's a hot finish to July, maybe a hot start to August. That's the first thing. But they're not backing off on the moisture. And if the moisture is still coming in from the Gulf, we're going to see some highly unstable air move into the midsection of the country. And you and I were talking off air before this. Some of the weather forecasters out there were tweeting about it over the weekend. I refrained from doing that because it's still kind of out there. It's next week. But we're starting to see the instability in the atmosphere in the Midwest on the heat and the humidity, which is what's needed, crank up our potential energy in the atmosphere. We call it CAPE, to values that are absolutely staggering, like 8,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE. Now, for the folks that have no idea what I just said, I mean, that's like 8 times what it can be for this time of year, where 1,000 to 2,000 joules was pretty normal. Now, when the atmosphere starts to build in that much instability, we have to talk about what time of year it is and what type of storm mode you could have. And so I'm just going to tell you, I'm not making any bold predictions, but what I'm trying to say is the atmosphere is starting to give us a signal to be watching out for the linear mode of convection. That's squall lines, bow echoes, derechos. And I'm just telling you, I'm going to be glued to my forecast models over the next 10 days to see how next week shapes up. So a lot of things on my mind right now going into this mid-July timeframe.
We'll stay close with you on that potential for next week for sure. I do want to ask you about wildfire smoke. We're seeing more of that come down from Canada. I got some pictures from a few farmers in North Dakota over the weekend showing just how thick some of that wildfire smoke was. Plus, we have some coming from out west. Talk about some of the impacts here, Eric.
So there's been a couple of studies on wildfire smoke, and long story short, they basically find this. If you keep the wildfire smoke in the upper atmosphere, so again, I'm not talking about the source regions of the fires, but the downstream movement of the smoke. If it stays in the upper atmosphere, the net effect is positive on yield. And what it's doing here in the middle of summer is reducing daytime heat stress. Okay. But if that smoke comes down lower in the atmosphere, it actually has a slight negative effect on crop yields. And so in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, which are all under, air quality alerts today, some of that smoke got pretty close to the ground. And so there's some question as to whether or not, if you are already seeing some stressed crops, if it's going to be on the downside of it. Mostly, though, if you're in the Midwest and there's fires in Canada or California or the Western US, we tend to have a net benefit because the smoke tends to drift into the upper atmosphere, which just tends to prevent us from getting a lot of excessive heat. So yeah, we need to watch these wildfires closely. And I'll say this, the Northwest, given how dry it's been, is primed right now for having a pretty active wildfire season. So it's not started yet. There's been a few fires, but we still have that whole wildfire season ahead of us, Jesse. So something to think about there.
Eric, what else are you tracking here at home or around the world as we work through the middle of July?
Yeah, we've had a lot of suppression in the atmosphere on our tropical season. Yes, there was Barry and Chantel did all the flooding in parts of Virginia, North Carolina, which was, again, it was kind of overshadowed by the huge flooding in Texas. But that's an area that today I've got flash flooding coming through. But back to the tropics, we need to think about later in the month, this lid that's been suppressing upper atmosphere tropical moisture is tropical convection is going to come off. We could be watching a late July, early August resurgence of tropical activity. And even today, the National Hurricane Center's got for parts of the Florida Panhandle over toward Alabama and into Mississippi, a 30% chance of some tropical development. I'm not worried too much about what could develop. I just think there's a lot of moisture to be tapped into, and therefore we should be on the lookout for flash flooding there as well. I think finally, Jesse, the big thing globally, I tracked a couple of things going on across Europe. France's NDVI values are record low. The Balkans, which is, I think, where the entire University of Illinois front court is going to be coming from in the basketball season next year or later this year. Anyway, they're very dry as well, but there's going to be a lot of thunderstorm activity coming into that region too. But the NDVI values across France specifically are terrible. That crop is hurt. But to what we'll be watching as we go into late summer and early fall is the atmosphere is behaving very La Nina-like. There are strong trade wind surges. There are cold water temperatures resurfacing. And I think we're going to have to be talking about what this fall may look like with the hurricane season for La Nina and then what this upcoming winter season could be. I mean, I know it's out there pretty far, but hey, I'll bring it up now so that it's not new news when we get into that time frame. And lastly, Jesse, I would just say this. Some of the longer range models are attempting to not delay the onset of the Brazilian monsoon. And that could be huge for our fall market prices, for corn and soybeans specifically, mostly probably for beans, if we see a very rapid early planting, maybe in October versus in November in South America. So that's another thing. Now, there's only one positive with that. These models at that longer range time frame have been terrible. They've been, You should honestly just take them and flip them and take the opposite. So I'll bring it up that they're trying to bring in an early start to the monsoon, but don't put any money on it just yet.
Well, always a bevy of information, and we appreciate everything that you do and joining us for the updates week in and week out. I know folks can go to agweather.com for much more information each and every day, can't they, Eric?
That's right. Just head over there. I got forecast videos, maps, whatever you want. And if you want more, just let me know. We'll put it on there. It's a fun website to build.
agweather.com, ag-wx.com for more. Eric Snodgrass with Nutrient Ag Solutions. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. You too, Jesse.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.